I'm Greg Giuliano. I'm an executive coach, organizational change consultant, and author. I believe leaders have the power to shape the future and change people's lives. I also believe people who challenge the status quo and go beyond usual and ordinary are rare. They're willing to go to the edge and push farther, over and over again. When I find these ultra leaders, I love to talk with them. In each episode, I talk with ultra leaders to learn how they do what they do and how they keep growing as leaders. I promise you a full dose of ultra leadership from other ultra leaders just like you in every conversation. We're at the edge of another episode. Let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of Ultra Leadership. My guest today is Karen Clark. Karen is Chief People Officer at Viably, creators of an all-in-one free financial tool for online sellers to run and grow their businesses. Before that, she headed up People for Insight Software. Karen has tremendous experience, global experience in the IT and pharmaceutical industries, including top talent recruiting, mergers and acquisitions, compensation and benefits, change management, innovation, and developing high-performing teams in both startup and maintenance environments. She is a strong developer of teams and talent within organizations. She has lived overseas for a while, and she calls North Carolina home. And I am thrilled to say welcome, Karen, to the program.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here.
I am looking forward to our conversation. When based on our last conversation and looking over your history and your bio and your experience with change, I'm all about change. And, I think that we as individuals and as teams and as organizations, when we go to the edge and we push a little bit farther, that's where we experience really positive and intentional transformation. So as a leader who has experience in transformation, what's the biggest challenge that you find when you're trying to lead an organization or a team through transformation?
Yeah, so, change is absolutely inevitable. There's globalization, competition, technology. Just think about how ChatGPT has taken off in just the last few months. And these are just a few examples of the things that are changing constantly. So for me, there are two things that are very important to consider when leading change. There's the psychological part, and then there's the technology or the systems part. And both are very important. So people need to understand the why of change. Why have we made this decision? Why is this important? What is in it for me? What does it mean for me? And you also have to ensure that the systems surrounding the change have been updated and they are also working. So in my opinion, you can't really have one without the other. And when your technology and your systems operate within the parameters of the change that you want, then your change initiatives will be much more successful. So it's really a two parts of that change. It's the people and the why, and then it's the systems and the technology around it.
Right. And I love that you get that balance of it and that you started with the people part first, right? So I love that because, sometimes in an organization, we may think, we're just going to announce this org change or we're going to introduce a new process. And then it's just an email or it's just, we throw it up on the internal site and then we just, people are fending for themselves. It's one thing to have that external event that we're announcing something's going to change, but every single human in your organization is processing that differently. And it takes them, they do it in their own way and in their own time. And so let's go a little bit more into being intentional about how do you help people with that process, right? So you mentioned a couple of the questions that we have to answer. Why are we changing? What's in it for me? There are some other questions I'm sure that you have to make sure that, they're probably going to ask this and we need to be ready to answer it over and over again.
That's right. And it really starts at the highest level of your organization. When you're announcing any type of change, you're going to start with your leadership teams and you're going to funnel that change throughout the organization so it permeates throughout your organization, and talk about it, to your point, over and over and over again. And that's what gets people comfortable. That's what allows them to appreciate what's going on, to better understand it. Is having group conversations where they can learn from questions other people are asking. It's individual conversations where they feel free in a more closed environment to ask the questions that might pertain just to them, or maybe it's something that they're not comfortable talking about in a more public setting. So it's really talking to people, looking at your change, coming up with some FAQs that you're pretty sure everybody's going to have, and putting that out there as well, and then talking to people individually. So it takes a lot for you to think about and consider the way people are going to interpret a change that your organization makes. It takes a lot of forethought on the part of you and your executive team. But when you do that well, then your people are going to understand what the change is and how they're going to be able to operate in this new paradigm, whatever it is.
Right. They have to find their place in this new world order, right? So, because when you announce it, whoever says we're going to change, there's a handful of people who they immediately go there. They're like already there.
Right.
But not the most of us are like, wait a second, what just happened? What's changing? Why is it changing? How does this impact my team? Right? What's in it for me? Like you said. And so it takes more time. And I love the fact that you said it starts with that leadership team, that they can't just announce something's going to change. You know, the leaders that I coach and work with in change, I tell them, if you announce a change and then something about the way that you operate doesn't also change, people aren't going to believe you. They're just going to wait you out.
Right.
Because they don't like it. I'm just going to wait because they don't mean it. I love that you start with the top team. So what do you do? How do you get that top team to be really intentional and make some shifts to how they show up so that the communications that you're putting out align with the actions of senior leadership?
The first thing is they have to be aligned. Your senior leadership team has to be aligned around that change. If they're not aligned, then they're absolutely not going to talk about it with their team. So you have to ensure that they are 100% all on the same page. And sometimes for a person in the HR, the people field, that is some coaching and some mentoring and asking questions. How are you feeling about this, right? So, just because you're on an executive team doesn't make you immune to the same questions everybody else has in the organization.
Yeah.
Right? You're thinking, gosh, all right, well, what does this mean for my team? What does this mean for me? Am I going, people are thinking, am I going to lose something? Am I going to gain something? What can I get out of this? How is this going to affect me? So you have to, from a people perspective, along with your CEO, you must constantly check in with your executive team and ask them questions. How are you feeling? How are your people feeling about this? But it all starts with making sure you are all aligned. And if you aren't aligned, then you need to be aligned before you go forward with that change, or it's going to make it much more difficult to get the rest of the organization to follow you.
Yeah, well, and I love how are we being intentional and aligned, and how are we going to communicate this with our teams? And you're right. Sometimes senior leaders, they need help communicating that, knowing how to have those conversations.
Yes.
Because sometimes they got into that room because they're very good at marketing, or they're very good at sales, or very good at, fill in the blank, but they're not very good at having these conversations about change and about people.
Right.
And teaching them and coaching them to have those kinds of conversations when they are perhaps themselves worried, about, in this change, what am I going to lose? Or what's my function going to lose? Or, right. So they start jockeying, they think they're jockeying against one another because, I don't want to lose anything in this change. And so working with the CEO to hold the team together and have them really work as a team and not just folks, trying to outmaneuver one another for resources. So there's a whole bunch going on there, and it starts with that top team. If they're not aligned, it ain't happening.
That's exactly right. I could not have said it better myself.
You do that, right? So I can talk about it, but you're doing it, on a regular basis and being with those teams and just keeping them in that work of, we need to communicate about the change, and the communication is more their actions than it is, an email or a PDF that is parked somewhere on the Teams channel.
Yeah, that's right. And, for a leader, he or she can look someone or a team of people in the eye and not be believable, right? They can basically read from a script. Today we are changing this, and this is what it means to us. And there's no emotion, there's no passion, there's no enthusiasm about it. And people see through that. They see that the person isn't genuine in the way that they are communicating this change or the way they're talking about the change. And a lot of times, executives, even at that level, they don't necessarily see that. They're like, yeah, no, I got it. I can read this. I understand what my assignment is here, but they really don't understand the assignment. And so it is getting them to practice and to talk about this with their peers. I am 100% for accountability partners in your work life. And even at an executive level, who's your accountability partner? Who's your person in the organization that you can talk to, you can bounce ideas off of, that you feel really close with? Take those people, practice what you want to tell your team, right? And this, we're talking about change, right? But really think about what that looks like and practice with your people. Find a coach, do something that is going to help you come across as a person and not necessarily a robot or someone who's just reading off the script, and that you're approachable. It's that approachableness in an executive that really gets you to that next level. And when you're talking about change and you are leading an organization through that change, then it's being very mindful of, even when you have to put your concerns aside, it's being mindful of how you're coming across. And that makes all the difference.
Yeah, you're taking care of people. And so you have to be approachable. You have to be empathetic. I mean, you can practice that. You can get better at that, but it takes some intention. So I'm glad you're there reminding these senior leaders that this is important for them. Be approachable, be empathetic. That's how we help people through change.
Right.
I love that you said have an accountability partner, because I think that helps all of us. We need somebody that we can bounce things off of. We need somebody who's going to give us, straight talk, real feedback. And I love that you said find a coach. Being a coach and having, a team of coaches, I'm thrilled that you said find a coach. I know where you can find some great coaches. So that's one way we keep growing as leaders. So how do you stay on your own journey of development? And how do you also, two parts, how do you encourage other leaders, the leaders in your organization, to keep growing? And then what's your practice?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I do read and keep up with the trends in the industry, but for me, growing is interesting. I like to learn new things, but not necessarily always in the work environment. I like to learn new things that foster my creativity. I took a woodworking class. I like to garden. I like to learn new arts and crafts, or I like to refinish a piece of furniture, learn how to do something. A lot of times that's through some kind of video channel that I watch somebody do it and go, I could do that same thing. But it's fostering that creativity in your personal or non-work time that makes me a better work individual, right? It makes me a better executive. It makes me a better leader. These skills help me learn and grow in my job. An interesting example of that is we moved into a house about 18 months ago, and I had a huge front garden and koi pond that was completely overgrown. And in about 2 weeks, I cleaned out all the weeds. I put down weed barriers. I tidied up the plants. I mulched it. And I learned a lot. One of the key things I learned was patience and then being very thorough in my work. So I did not have to come back and pull weeds every single year. And as my mind wandered while I was pulling those weeds, I thought about how I could better utilize patience and thoroughness in my work, both as a leader and an executive, and how sometimes when you're in the thick of a sticky work problem, all you can see are the weeds, right? But when you lift your head up and you look at this bigger landscape, you can see how much work you've already done. You can see that you're almost finished with the project, and soon you'll not have to pull weeds anymore and you'll have a really beautiful garden. So it's just an interesting thing when I'm doing something creative, then my mind has that ability to wander a little bit, and I can always find a correlation between that project and something at work that maybe where I'm stuck or maybe where I'm thinking about it one way and I see a completely different way to view that new project. And it's very helpful for me.
That's some awesome. It's incredible. So it's incredible how the brain works, right? So you're pulling weeds and you're making all of these connections while you got your hands dirty and you're doing this work. And it's a way that you re-energize. So it keeps you resilient so that when you are in it with leaders and teams, that you have the energy to stay present because you've been intentional about, oh no, this is what I have to do to stay fully energized so I can be absolutely present when I am at work and need to be present.
That's exactly right. And it drives me nuts when executive says to me, I don't have time for anything outside of work. Well, then you should make time. It makes you a better person. It makes you a better human, probably a better significant other, parent, dog parent, whatever it is. It makes you better to take that time to re-energize, as I believe it's Franklin Covey who says, sharpen the saw.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You got to sharpen the saw, and you've got to take time for yourself. You've got to take time to learn new things. If it's just you're going for a run in the morning or a walk and you are, getting out that stress and that frustration and that anxiety that you have that's swirling around you all the time, and then you come to work and you're your very best self.
Yeah, that's a red flag for me. I don't have time for anything outside of work. Oh man, we got to fix that. We need bring some balance to the force here, because that's not the way it should be. I'm sure that your significant other just loves that.
Yeah, I always have a project of some sort. And, I love to put together furniture. I don't know. It's like something that everybody hates. And I'm the one that says, oh, I'll come over and put that together for you. I love it's like tapping into the engineering side of my brain, like, oh, we're going to start with, step 1 and then step 2 and then step 3, A, B, and C, and going through that really methodically, because in HR, a lot of times it's not necessarily a step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of emotional things that you're dealing with. There's a lot of people things that you're dealing with that don't follow steps. So, having that outlet to follow the steps and move through that is, I think something everybody can learn from.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important for everybody. I know that for me, if I can tell when it's time for me I need to get out on a trail. I need to go for a run because I am not being present. I am not focused. And it doesn't need to be a long time, 20 minutes just to, okay, I see trees, I breathe, and now I can come back. Or even just I know when I'm with a client, sometimes it's like, I need 15 minutes and I go and walk around the building, go outside and walk around the building. So we are built, we pulse, right? So everything happens in a cycle. And so we need to recognize where our troughs are and, okay, I don't want it to get too deep. And so I know how to take breaks to re-energize. And you've got that you're dialed in on that. And if we could teach leaders how to do that, just understand the rhythm of things. And we need breaks. When you're running a long race, there are aid stations where, stop. have a banana, have something to eat, or just sit down for a minute. So you figured that out. And if we can help other leaders to figure that out, that's huge.
Yes. And I will say, I didn't always have this figured out, right? So, if you're a young leader and you're thinking, I don't have this figured out, that's okay. That's why we learn, we develop, we grow, we find the things that work for us and we start to incorporate them in our lives. And that is so important to figure that out. If something's not working for you right now, great. Figure out why it isn't working, where you're stuck, what you need to change, and then let's do that, right? And if that doesn't work, then go back and try something else. And it takes people a while to figure that out. It took me forever to figure it out. If I knew now, if I knew back when I was 20, all the things that I know now, gosh, I would be so much more successful than I probably, than I am. Yeah, and it all worked out for me. But, when you think about that 20 or that 30-year-old self and what you knew then, and you were doing the very best that you could, but start to think more and more about, all right, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. And let's start a plan to get me there.
Yeah. Well, and just helping them realize that, especially when we were all in the same building, that I can't ever be seen not doing anything or to appear like I'm not busy.
Right.
Oh my God. If somebody walked by my cube and I look like I'm not doing something, I'm in trouble. And it's just the opposite. We need to build in, oh no, I need a break now. I need time to recharge. And so staying resilient, because as you said at the beginning, this isn't the last change. This is just this change. There's another one coming and another one coming. It's not a bug. It's a feature in the system. There's going to be another change.
That's right.
And so if we're not resilient, we're not going to be able to navigate that and we're not going to be able to lead through that. So,
right. And resiliency is key. It is the number one thing. And I find that personally, I value that trait in myself more than anything else, is being able to see the positive in whatever it is you're working through, even when it's sticky and it's messy and it's no fun. And you're like, oh, when is this ever going to stop? It's being resilient and looking at it from a different perspective, using past experiences to draw on ways I could do this better or differently. All of those things are so important to learn.
Yes. Love it. Love it. This has been awesome. And I can't believe oh my gosh, look at the time. It's incredible. So I like to end meetings with an expression of gratitude and letting everybody express some gratitude because it's good for our brains. It helps us re-energize. So I just want to let you know, I am so grateful for our conversation today. And I'm grateful for you. And I'm grateful that you are where you are and they're influencing these leaders that you're influencing. So I appreciate that. So thank you for being with us today. I'm going to give you the last word. What are you grateful for today?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. So obviously, I'm grateful to have this opportunity to talk to you, to talk about change and leadership and growing. Right. I'm also really grateful for my family, the ones with 2 legs and the ones with 4. I have amazing friends, a great set of people around me that help me be a better person every day and do this job that I love and working with amazing people. And I really love that. And I have this quote that I have on my desk from Steve Jobs, and it says, "The only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking, don't settle." And I really love that quote because that's what I keep in the back of my mind all the time. If you haven't found what you'd love to do yet, keep looking for it and don't settle.
Awesome. And that's the final word. Thank you, Karen. Really appreciate it. Thank you, too, for listening to another episode of Ultra Leadership. We'll see you next time.
If you're enjoying Ultra Leadership, please take a minute and give us a review wherever you find your podcasts. And please stay in touch. Sign up for our Ultra Leadership newsletter at ultraleadership.com. Now, before you jump to your next meeting, I invite you to reflect on what you heard today. What stood out for you? What insight might you want to incorporate into your leadership practice? Until next time, remember, as a leader, you always have the power to shape the future and change lives. So go to the edge and push farther. Thanks for listening.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.